Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gamer Interrupted. My name is AJEastCoast, and tonight we have a very special show for you. We have another game dev series, and we are going to be interviewing the developer of a very cool upcoming children's game in a 3D world set. In the developer's name is Remy Crespo. He is the creative detector. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gamer Interrupted. My name is AJ. He is the creative director. Sorry about that. We had an echo.
Hey yo.
He is the creative director of Floppy and the Sleepy Planet, and with us tonight, as always, an actual legend and a Sleepy Planet dev. Remy, how you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. How about you?
Doing good. Dealt with that crazy rain here earlier today, but now it's all cleared up.
It's Florida, it rains and then stops and then it's hot and then it rains again.
Something I was trying to tell outside Florida peeps is that if you don't like the weather, just wait about an hour and a half.
Pretty much. It's the only state where you can have like a hurricane for 5 minutes and then completely like 1,000-degree weather the next. You get used to it.
So Remy, tonight we got you on because you have an upcoming game called Floppy and the Sleepy Planet. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So it is a game that I've been working on for some time, with my side business, Broad Strokes. We have been developing it, with myself and some of my colleagues. We are all industry professionals, still working in the field or working remotely or freelancers. So Floppy and the Sleepy Planet is a game currently in development for Nintendo Switch, made with the Unreal 4 engine. It is a game that is very reminiscent of Spyro, Mario Galaxy, Sonic Colors, Ratchet and Clank. It's meant to be an entry point game for a younger gamer. So it's a very non-violent experience, number one. It's a game where actually no violence. It's all about problem solving, tricky platforming, and problem solving. And it's solving this larger-than-life narrative. You're this little robotic character named Floppy, and you have awakened on this planet with this character named Kara, who looks suspiciously like a floating carrot golem, who interacts with you and actually knows all about you. But for whatever reason, you have no idea of your memories, who you are, why you're even here. And the game kind of slowly unwinds from there. And you're helping these larger life guardian characters that are responsible for all these different things on the planet. And it's all about helping them overcome a lot of emotional problems and trauma and things that like little kids would actually go through. Because a big thing that we're trying to do is make a game that's very focused on the child's perspective of problems. So all the problems that the guardians face are things that kids deal with, like being different, being alone, sharing, things of that type of nature. And it's been going pretty good. We've got some recognition for the game. We showcased at a couple of big conventions before the world ended recently. I went to PAX South, and I showcased over there at the Latinx Lounge. We had a really big foot traffic, constantly had people playing the game. We've been showcased on Epic's live streams on numerous occasions showing off the game. And we haven't announced it on our social media, but I can say it verbally at least because it'll be hard to tie it back. We recently got awarded a dev grant for the game too.
Wow, congratulations, man.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about a little bit, for our viewers that are not really sure what a dev grant is, could you explain that just a little bit for us?
Sure. So a dev grant is something that Epic Games has been doing. They came into this little game called Fortnite. It's a small game. Nobody's ever heard of it.
We've had our opinions about Fortnite.
Yeah. Have your opinions on what they are, but Fortnite did very well for Epic Games, and Epic Games has been a game engine called the Unreal Engine that's been around since the early 1995 days.
Wow.
In fact, I've been using Unreal since Unreal 2, to give perspective. And that's back like before college. That's back when I was in high school. So that's a long, long time ago, back when the dinosaurs still roamed. But they have since been developing games to Unreal Engine, and more of the game industry has shifted away from using their own private engines and using more commercial engines because they're just easier to maintenance, update, and it's easier to train people if they all use the same software. So Epic Games has been leaning out front for a couple of years. In the last couple of years, they published and pushed for a game called Fortnite, which drastically exploded their market and their visibility as a game company, and has made them very profitable. So as a way to kind of give back to the community, they started doing what's referred to as the dev grants, where you can submit a project, a prototype, you can submit an idea, you can basically get this in front of them and say, hey, look, I'm doing this thing. I really can use some money to progress this further. And they, pick and choose what they feel is good for them and good for the community. And they award them some dev grant seed money to help them further along their projects, or just to honestly just give them money for doing something good for the community. Because it's not just tied to businesses, it's tied to individuals as well.
Well, the last time that we had it on our last game dev series, we interviewed the developer of Anti-Pong, and something, Gino, that we talked about a lot is that a lot of the times money can be a huge issue when it comes to making games. Is that something that you've experienced in your entire career, or do you think more recently, is due to COVID, has that also put a hindrance on because you said you guys are all working remotely, obviously, same thing with university and...
So, in the short answer of it, yes, it always is an issue, but it's not an issue in the sense of like, oh, I can't work on this because I don't have money. It's more along the lines of like, money makes things easier, but money also complicates things because you have to plan for it. And the biggest problem that a lot of, we'll just say, inexperienced developers have is that they don't plan ahead of time if they have money. Okay. And they usually go with the idea that they're never going to have money. So because of that, when money ever becomes a thing, money changes people. I'm speaking as an ex-business owner because I've already owned 3 different businesses in my lifetime that I operated. My previous business, I did a lot of outsourcing for video games and film. So I worked like on Skullgirls, Indivisible, World of Tanks, Lawbreakers when I was still a thing. So I understand how money operates as a business owner. But then after I shifted fully into being just a game developer, only in a game studio, no outsourcing work, just only doing that, I went with the idea that I'm not going to have money, so I need to get people that share the same vision as me that realize that the money will come later versus upfront. Okay. Which, when you work with experienced people, unless they're really good friends of yours, it's very hard because unless they share a common vision, shared workplace, or they're just people you've worked with for years, it's really hard to convince people to work for free. So going with the idea of operating with money in mind is something you have to plan for on day one, even if there is no money for the next 5 years. Because as soon as it comes in, you know where that money gets allocated to. Like recently, we just came to this money, and it has become a discussion point for me and my business partners, but we already knew if money came into the equation, where the money best would be spent. And right now, we are just making sure that this money that we received is not being misspent on things that are unnecessary for the project. So it definitely expedites things, and it makes things way easier. Because ultimately, let's face it, I can hire 20 people if I had the right amount of money for it versus one person with no money. So it just makes a lot of things infinitely easier. Man.
Yeah, that's like a whole different insight to the game making process.
Unfortunately, this is the side of games that most people don't enjoy. It's the business.
The behind the scenes, right? I think we've talked about that on the show before. There isn't the regular consumer doesn't really understand the full aspect of the behind the scenes and how things really, the best that I can describe it, Gino, is like making a TV show. It's similar to that. Like, how would you agree with me, Gino?
Well, I think when I hear you guys talk about it, like the times we've talked about it on the podcast or the stream, is like it sounds like making a movie. You know how they have all of the, all of the concept art and all this. Yeah, exactly. Star Wars is like 8 minutes of just credits, bro, and it's like that was the creative team.
These were all the people
who did audio. You're like, what the fuck? Why are there 18 countries on this credits? That's what it feels like. That's why I always think it's wild when game developers are like, oh, next year it's going to be out next summer, and like they don't even have gameplay footage or stuff like that. I'm like,
so
how you guys are you?
Some of the bigger companies just get away with that because they have the right financial backing to they can say that and do it. Whereas like a person like me, I have to be very cautious about like when they say, "Hey, when's floppy coming out?" I'm like, "Soon." Trademark.
I was checking out your website and stuff and looking at your other things, and you're like, it was your YouTube. It's like 3 years of game development that you guys have the behind the scenes, and I was like,
oh yeah, the evolution.
Like that video is a year old. I was like,
intense, man.
My God, that's so much work. I think I've always, I told AJ this once before too. I think I've always wanted to like design games and make games, But as soon as you figure out what a labor of love it is, it's like you got to be really committed.
I think it's
Yeah,
a hidden world that a lot of people forget is there, Remy. So with that being said, like how long have you been doing this in the industry? Because we've had previous developers on that said that they've started at an age developing and producing it by themselves.
13.
Chris said did it at 13. You know, at what age did you start coming into the video game industry?
So professionally coming in, I got my first job while I was still in college. So I was 20 when I got my first job.
Now, were you studying game design back, or was it something different?
So it was something different back then. I went to a different university because this was at my time very new, like 15 years ago. Like games were still like a weird magical thing that no one understood. It wasn't like now where you could just jump on YouTube and learn from some dude in a foreign country. It's now more along the lines of like, you have all these different universities that teach it. But 15 years ago, there's only like a handful of places that even remotely taught it, and it was very shotgun how it was done. So I did get a game design degree. It was game art and design. I used to be an artist originally in the profession, and I shifted more to design as the years went on. But as you may have heard me say, I had my own business at one point. So I used to be a producer, a project manager. I've done a lot of different roles in the game industry. The game industry evolves, and because it evolves, you have to evolve with it, or you get left behind very quickly. With that being said, though, as far as like, the spark, like what made me want to do it, like at what point did I realize it? I can still say to this day, I was in kindergarten when I said it. And I stuck with it all the way to high school. And I was that weird kid that's like, you're not going to get a profession doing this. You're weird. And sure enough, I was the weird kid that got a profession doing it and working with very, we'll just say high up games. A lot of interesting IPs that people usually go crazy over. And I got a chance to work on all of those. So I always knew I wanted to do this since I've been a little kid. So it was never like this like coming of Jesus moment where I realized the games were the way. I just always knew that I wanted to recreate the experiences that I felt in games. And I always felt the games were a good escape for people. And I always wanted to kind of recreate that feeling for people growing up. I always thought that people need an escape from reality. And especially right now, like reality is particularly bad right now. And if you want to kind of derail the conversation even further, the best things right now for people are entertainment.
Yeah.
Video games, movies. They're the biggest things that are keeping people grinding right now while we're in such a bad time in the world. And I always knew that would be a good escape for people at a young age because I felt that when I was younger. And I didn't want to lose sight of that as I got older. So, years later, a lot of getting knocked on my ass and, learning a lot of life lessons the really hard way because I was really stubborn about a lot of things. I eventually ended up in games. I got my first job while I was still in college. My last year being a senior. I worked for a small company called Stratagon. They've since have been gone. This is going back like 14, 15 years ago. But they gave me my start. I worked on mobile games when I first started. And I worked on a whole bunch of mobile games.
I was just going to ask you, I had an idea, obviously been in gaming so long, but I was going to ask you if this was your first game.
It's okay, Bubba.
But then you started talking, I was like, dude, this is not this. No,
I can totally answer that question. Believe it or not, this is my 10th game. This is my 10th.
10? Wow, okay.
10. Yes, I have been trying to make games since I was in college. I, back in college, formed my first business, which was a small LLC with me and some friends in college that had no idea what we were doing. And we were all artists. We didn't really have programmers or engineers. We learned a lot of life lessons really quickly. But I remember making 2 different game attempts during that time, one called Scratch Beat and the other one called Project Eden. And one was supposed to be like a stealth game that was all about using the environment around you and kind of being able to grab dynamic objects to kind of like move around. So kind of like a very elegant hide and seek game, which this is before now where like Metal Gear and all that has already done this. We're going back like 15 years ago. So that was, of course, very ambitious. The other one was like a side-scroller mashup game where it was supposed to be very music-driven, where all the combos and the moves were like a rhythm game, but it was still like a beat-em-up. So think like Streets of Rage meets like DDR or like Elite Beat Agents. That was kind of the idea towards that whole game. Anyway, fast forward, I made many different projects, many different designs. I did presentations, documents, prototypes, and they all fell through for one reason or another. Floppy, the current project, has been probably the most successful project I've worked on in the course of all the 10 games I've developed over the last 15 years. And this has been the one that's gotten the most publicity. It's gotten the most attention. And overall, it's just been the most fun to work on. Despite all my other projects having a place in my heart, those other projects all had their flaws because I only thought up to a certain point of their design. Floppy, I've fully designed out. I have a full beginning, middle, and end design in writing and in my head and with my team that share a similar vision that I do. So,
well, from what I understand, you had a huge say in all of the art, or you did all the art yourself. Is that correct?
So yes and no. So as I mentioned, I was formerly a 3D artist on the project. So everything that you physically see in Floppy, I have created. However,
wow, okay.
Without there being the art team, being my concept artist, being Melanie, and being Henry, I would not have concepts to build from because I am not really the artsy-fartsy type where I get just to create feelings and I make it look good. I've never been that type of person. But if you give me a concept and say, hey, here's a blueprint, build it, I can totally do that. I think more like an engineer. It's just that I happen to know how to do artwork because of it. So luckily I had some really good blueprints to follow to really make the game shine and look the way it does. And I also work with some other people on the team who are very technical, who know how to do very advanced visual effects. So all those visual effects that you see, all like the grass, the vegetation, all those things, those little details that you may notice in the videos, those are all done by the other team members, like the technical artists, like Anthony and Jan.
Okay.
So everyone plays their part. But I am the only 3D artist on this project currently, and I cry every time we have to make new stuff because it's a lot.
I was telling Gino that it almost plays like a narrative storybook, like a children's storybook. Like when you open a page, you've got the level, you've got, even with the dialogue itself is how it plays is what I noticed. And you're continuing at, it almost feels like you're playing through an entire Floppy and the Planet sleepy storybook. And Gino, I know we talked a little bit before stream about experience. Tell us a little bit about how experience is important, in that aspect.
Well, I was checking out the videos and stuff too. I thought it looked pretty, it was almost like some of the character, what did you call her earlier? The Golem, I think it was.
Oh, Kara.
Oh, Kara. Yeah, that's cool. The little Kara, yeah.
I was like...
Kara, yeah, I mean, carrot.
Yeah, I was
it's
like...
all play on words.
This game is cute as... Bro, I was like, everything about this is adorable. I got strong Ratchet and Clank vibe.
Yeah, definitely the earlier Wii PS2, is what I was thinking when I first got my hands on it. And then after I saw, I believe An Hour a Day Gamer was the last people to stream the game playing it through. As soon as I saw that, I was like, it seems like the early Wii games, the early PS2 games that kind of draw you in and you're playing for a few hours and you're like, oh, I just went through this entire world,
Yeah. It's meant to be a game they could pick up and put down. Like, there is a narrative. You're kind of right. The children's storybook is a big direction. Like the golden storybooks that you might remember when you were little is a big direction that we're trying to do for the game because we want to make it feel like it's a story being told to you. But we're trying not to make it very wordy. We're trying to make it more like the world, the setting tells you the story. There are some characters that lead you by some narrative stuff, but it's not like 10 paragraphs worth of dialogue that a 5-year-old just zooms out and doesn't pay attention to anyway. We try to make it that it's more like the environment, the world, and these characters tell you the story without even having to verbally say anything. So you get a feeling of like distress, you get a feeling of happiness, and we do a lot with the character designs, the environments, and just overall the gameplay. We want to make sure all that stuff really reflects that.
Would you go as far as to say that immersion was a huge focus? Because that was something that I saw just from watching the gameplay the other night. Was I personally felt very immersed into the world. I couldn't imagine what a 7 or an 8-year-old was going to say when he saw this. What do you think, Gino?
Well, it's funny because at conventions, usually we're referred to as the babysit booth at most conventions because parents would dump kids off at our booth and then like leave, and that's happened like at 3 or 4 conventions already. It scared me one time. Actually, it scared me the first 2 times it happened because I'm like, I'm a stranger and you just dropped your 5-year-old in front of my booth. What's wrong with you? And they're like, I'm gonna come back in a half hour. Keep an eye on my kid. And I'm like, no. What are you doing?
I'm not qualified for this.
I get it. I mean, if you look at that game, the first video I was looking at, the perspective, I was like, this almost feels like a Crash Bandicoot or something, you know?
Yep.
But then the art style feels like Ratchet and Clank on the characters, but the environment feels more like Pokemon. It just felt like...
There is a mashup of a lot of different genres.
Yeah.
We actually draw a lot of inspiration as well from animation. So Disney's a big inspiration for us for a lot of the animation, the feeling that you get from the game. So that's why we want to make sure that those characters feel cute. They feel cuddly. One of our design pillars is you don't want to hurt the bunny. That's like one of our design pillars. Because in most games, you don't have a problem hurting your main character. They get annoying after a while. There's only a handful of games where you've legitimately felt bad about hurting a character. And I can hand count those games. Like, that's how few that they are. So that's been a very hard challenge. How do you make something that's cute, fun, and engaging all at the same time without being redundant and annoying and, you know, in your face? You get to get every one of those old platformers, and eventually at some point you just want to strangle them. Spyro even had that point, unfortunately.
We've got 2 comments in the chat. One's from Spidersby. She says, my fave is the Gurren Lagann skin that's in the game.
Yeah, we have skins for the character. We have a couple of different unlockables, and one of our main unlockables are golden Easter eggs that you find hidden in the world.
Like actual Easter eggs, not, you know.
Actual golden Easter eggs, because of course I had to.
Yeah.
But those act like a currency in the game where you get to buy costumes for Floppy and Kara. And one of the costumes that we have is Super Space Force Floppy, Super Space Commander Floppy, which was inspired by Gurren Lagann.
I know you like that, Gino.
Yeah. So it was it's super galactic adventure. We keep coming up with different names for it because we can't say Gurren Lagann, obviously.
Right.
But it is very inspired by Gurren Lagann. As I mentioned, a lot of the game is inspired by, believe it or not, like cartoons and anime. We pull a lot of inspiration for our animations from a lot of different animes for certain character movements and things like that. Whereas the backgrounds, we actually pull a lot of them from Ghibli films. In fact, Castle in the Sky was a big inspiration for a lot of the backgrounds in our game. And you can kind of see like Castle in the Sky elements where floating vegetation, flowers, overgrowing moss, old stone structures. So we wanted to kind of get that the world felt so old, it felt magical feeling. And we had to kind of find the right grounded source to look at. So luckily, coming from an art background, I know how to talk to artists and relay a lot of this information to them and really make sure that this vision is kept over. But then slowly shifting more into design over the last couple of years, I make sure that no matter what we do artsy-fartsy-wise, it's always backed up by gameplay. Because there's nothing worse in the game that tells you a story with nothing to do. And I will always stand by that. As much as I love like the Uncharted, The Last of Us, and all those type of games, I feel like 80% of those games tell me what to do versus me playing a game. And I've always kind of argued saying that like the gameplay is not really what sucks you in with those games. It's the immersion of the story. But once the story is done, it's done. And that doesn't really make you want to keep going.
Well, it's funny you say that because we got another comment in the chat that said it felt like I was playing through a Disney movie. And I totally can see that because, you know, think about when a little kid, I use Frozen for an example. They get so, I don't want to say the word addicted, but they get so, it almost is like it. They're so involved in that, you know what I mean? And it seems like, you know, obviously someone figured that out a long time ago with little kid stuff. I definitely, at 25 years old playing the game, I felt like that. So I can definitely make, you know, someone with a younger, maybe not mindset, we probably share similar mindset, young kids, but, you know, they're definitely going to be fully immersed into this game.
It's cute as shit,
That's
dude.
the goal.
That's the way to say it. It's cute as shit.
Cute as shit.
Sellers, you rock.
That's the first time I've heard it.
And then, yo, True Hackle. It's out. It's you said it's intended for the Wii Switch, right? Or excuse me, the Nintendo Switch.
So currently it is in development for Nintendo Switch and PC. What platform of PC I can't say because we're not at the point of release yet. So if you're gonna ask me if I'm on Steam or Epic or Itch or whatever, the short answer is PC. I don't know. As far as Xbox and PlayStation is concerned, I would like to be a cross-platform, but I have to play certain rules of development, and I don't have access to those platforms yet. But they're on the radar for the future. But I can definitely say safely that PC and Nintendo Switch are going to be released because I have a Switch dev kit, and I'm developing a game for PC. So it works for both. So
Awesome stuff. Mesa Q is asking too, would you want it to play more like a simulator, full immersion? But this is kind of like a learning or
so this
a
is more
simulating
kind of
game.
like, so think of this more honestly like a this is a Ratchet and Clank, this is a Spyro, this is a Mario Galaxy. There is a story. There is a story for you to follow. But what I'm doing a little bit different, aside from the non-violence approach and the lack of enemies, I'm also focusing on non-linear gameplay. And what I mean by that is that the world is kind of an open sandbox style gameplay. And to be more precise about what that means for this specific game, Floppy will start off with a hub tutorial level to teach you the basic mechanics, and that's going to be the only real linear part of the game up until the ending. After that, you'll have access to 4 different unique worlds, and those worlds can be explored in any order you want at any time you want. As long as you finish the critical path, meaning like the main story elements of that world, it will unlock the next element of the game. And none of those 4 worlds are dependent on each other to be finished in a particular order for something else to happen in another world.
Well, that's different, Gino, from, kind of the reward system that I think nowadays gamers are used to. You know what I mean? In a way,
I think it's kind of a cool new concept too. I like the idea of that the route is kind of like the storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's like if you want to like do
branch out
the
side quest.
and that's totally the idea. So like if you want to do the more like, you want to help the guy who lost his friend, you want to deal with that fetch quest like gameplay stuff first.
Right.
You can totally do that one first. You want to do the more engaging like Power Rangers experience one where you're trying to reform the team together and form the giant robot. That's a total option. None of these really are stopping the player with gatekeeping from one world to another world. We do have a form of gatekeeping, though, that we lock out with a feature. So this is kind of like where that gray area fits. The idea is that every world will unlock something new that Floppy can explore. So all Floppy's movements are fully unlocked. There's no Metroid style, you need to get like a morph ball to continue the game, none of that. However, there are certain things in the game that Floppy cannot interact with until he resolves a problem in our world. So for example, all the water in the planet is corrupted. It's all purple and sticky and slimy. You can't swim in it. So Floppy, every time he tries to jump in it, he sinks to the bottom, he gets teleported out. So you have to go deal with the Turtle Guardian, Mata, and help him fix the water temple and fix all the pumps on the planet. When you do that, all the water sections and all the worlds, including his world, now become new areas you can explore later. So there's a lot of like back and forth type of gameplay.
Oh, that's pretty dope.
So we have 4 worlds that you can interact with a critical path you follow with their main story, but you don't have to do it. I mean, yes, you have to eventually do it if you want to complete the game, but you don't have to do it if you go to that world. You can just totally go in there and just have a good time and explore and try to find things if you can, because we don't gatekeep for the player. We do have certain sections that you eventually have to come back to, but kind of like the Mario Odyssey approach, we don't punish the player if they find a way to get to something if they're not supposed to.
Okay.
So that's a little bit tricky because there are times when there really are things that they're not supposed to do that are sequence breaking stuff that I can't really predict. But accessing areas are just hard to get to. If a player somehow platforms just the right way to get to it, I'm not going to punish the player for doing it. Totally, like, it's made with speedrunning in mind, actually.
Yeah, heck yeah, dude.
We have another comment in chat. It says, how many hours is story playthrough would you estimate? And that comes from True Howley.
Sure. So short answer is because it's still not really, fully built yet. I can't really say like an exact number, but we were projecting 15 to 20 hours worth of core gameplay from beginning to end. Not including side quests, not including, every collectible, not completionist stuff, just critical path, playing it from the beginning to the end, roughly between 15 and 20 hours. And we did that based on a metric of one level that you see currently in our tutorial takes like around a half hour for a player to complete. One world would be 5 of those sections stitched together, and including a dynamic boss element at the end, being the guardian that you have to interact with. So we project that one world should take theoretically between 4 to 5 hours, plus an additional hour for the boss stuff, depending on the complexity. So 5 hours. So
Spiders B also said, how would you feel if speedrunners beat it in under like 5 minutes?
It's gonna I already know for a fact that like someone's gonna find just the right way of breaking the game, and they're gonna feel like that they defeated me. And you know what? I think they spent $30 on my game, and I feel happy about that. That's what I think.
You spent $30 to play for 5 minutes. Good job.
Yep. Honestly, I actually like speedrunning. I actually watch AJEastCoast and all the speedrunning events. I think they're super fascinating. On the mathematical level, some people find like these exact RNG sequences that like on a programmatic level should not exist, and they find these amazing sequences years later. So I love people that break games. I think it's super fascinating to watch. And to me, as long as people are enjoying the game, I can't really fault them for playing it and being in 5 minutes. That's all on them. I just hope they at least get a chance to play it normal at least once. That's all I ask.
We have another question. The True Halley also says, have you thought about expansions? Will they be coming anytime?
DLCs. How many DLCs?
Actually, it's funny. Remember how I said earlier, like if you don't have a plan for money, you know what to do with it.
Does DLC fall under that same blanket umbrella?
Well, game design also falls under that umbrella, like where if you don't have a plan for beginning, middle, and end, and supporting it after it exists, you're dead in the water. So indie games right now have a model that they've been adapting. The bigger ones, we'll call them the Triple B studios.
Okay.
The AAA, the Triple B, and then there's C, D, and F. And the C, D, and F are all the games. AAA and Triple B are the ones that you remember. So like the Hollow Knights, the Meat Boys, the Shovel Knights, those are Triple B.
Okay, something not something for our viewers, not as blockbuster that you're used to. Something like Red Dead Redemption.
You can Google search it and you can find it immediately, and there's a lot of people playing it. Mm-hmm. Like it's on that level. So Triple B game devs, what they do is they've recently in the last 5 years adopted a model of continuous support for a game. So what they do is they release a mostly bite-sized chunk game, a short, sweet experience. Think of it kind of like Enter the Gungeon is a great example.
Okay.
Enter the Gungeon came out like 8 years ago at this point, and they had the first version. Next summer, they gave a free update, and the free update added a new character, and it added like 100 new guns. Then a new update came out, and they added like 5 new bosses and a new floor. And they kept doing that over the years, over and over, every summer or every couple months or whatever. And eventually they released their final DLC for free like last year. And what makes that very interesting is that it constantly brought new users into playing the game because it kept supporting the fan base that was currently playing it with new content, and it gave an entry point for a new player to come in feeling like they could get more money, get more for their money. So they come in spending $20. The original people are like, oh, I love this game. A year later, someone comes in spending $20, and it's like they get a game and 2 other games attached to it. Right. So they feel like they get more bang for their buck.
Right.
So with Floppy, to kind of just give context to this, I've already thought about this a long time ago of like, okay, what are we going to do after Floppy is done? Let's say Floppy is the flagship of our studio, and Floppy is cute, it does okay, but it's not like a blockbuster. What do we do to continue? And the idea was that we're going to do a split of the teams.
Okay.
Team A would focus on additional content for Floppy in the form of smaller adventures and additional DLC stuff, like costume packs and things of that nature. So
almost
kind of like the Mario Odyssey approach.
Almost like, Gino, like kind of like Animal Crossing, where they do the May Day events or maybe an Earth Day event, something like that.
Exactly. But these are going to be more like Hollow Knight expansions, where they were going to be their own little side stories that you can interact with. And it'll be like their own little self-contained worlds that were not part of the main narrative, but gave you reward and some additional story elements of the world itself that we're building up. The idea was that Team A, that was still working on Floppy, moves into that small team working on DLC stuff. And throughout the year, they try to release at least 2 packs. While they're doing that, we, as Team B, work on a smaller scope game that's meant to be more of like a party game, as an in-between game before our next big game in the future. So the idea is that we work on a game as a studio. When the game releases, we support it for half a year to a year. And in that time period, as we do steady updates, we're working on a new title. And then at the end of that new title, when that's released, then we release that smaller second team's title, think like Overcooked, something like of that nature. And then Team A and Team B merge back together, and then we start working on a big project again. And then that's the progress of the studio. And so the short answer is DLC, yes. What it's going to be, I don't know. The game's not done yet. I have ideas, but I want to finish the game first. So I don't want to be too ambitious and do things that are going to just make me turn into an old man working on this game. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's an awesome plan. Gino is also a business owner himself. He does Mafia Muscle training. Little side plug there for you, Gino.
Hey.
Gino, so he talked a little bit about having that business plan. Is that something that is that something that you put into your mind like from day one, Gino? Have you done that something similar with your business? Is that something that kind of give us a little breakdown from the business side of the house? I know we've talked a lot about deving about tonight.
How could you possibly want to create a career in something that you want to be your main source of income, not think about how you're going to support yourself while you do it? I think you got to be fucking silly not to do that, in my opinion. Like, my whole thing about when I started Mafia Muscle was, like, I've either got to be able to save up enough money to buy equipment, buy a space, and run a gym like that, or I've got to work a job that allows me to train or gives me access to stuff. So, I mean, I think that you guys got a great setup over there from what it seems like, because unfortunately I hate this phrase, but, you know, not having a plan is a plan to fail, bro. That's just the way it is. Stupid maybe beside, you know?
It's the honest truth. The worst thing you can do is just wing it. And I've worked with a lot of professionals that wing it, and they ride on the credibility of their name, and then when it comes down to like numbers and dollars or whatever, they fall apart.
So that's how we get shit from big titles. That's what I feel like.
Exactly.
People get full of themselves, bro, and they're like, you know, we've had so many great games. Look at these great stories. I bet you we could just do a little thing about how the character does this and that, and it's kind of like a.
So unfortunately, games are becoming more and more like movies. And for every one good movie, you're going to have 5 B movies that come out from the same studio. And it's the unfortunate nature that games are so, I don't want to say easy, but they're accessible now versus years before where good games took time to incubate in the companies and come out. Because realistically, not everyone owned a super high-end PC like out of the box. Like only a handful of people had that back then. Gaming consoles were only like they were still kind of new. They weren't like everyone had a game console, and if they did, it's kind of like how it is now. You had like your 1 or 2 good games that you played on that console constantly, and then you had like 3 or 4 filler games that you played in between, like with your family, with your siblings, or whatever. So, unfortunately, this is just something that I don't really see changing with the game industry. It's going to always exist, but the good companies, the ones that learn from their mistakes at least, realize that they have certain brands that they can't taint with bad ideas. And I will always use this company as an example because they rarely have done bad, and it's Nintendo. Nintendo has always built with the one idea in mind since day one. Families and kids. Day one. They've always gone with that mentality from day one and all the way to now. Have they worked on violent things? Have they worked on more adult things? Yeah, absolutely. Not Breath of the Wild, but what was the one? Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess was super adult.
It was very dark,
It's very dark. And yet it was still made to be accessible by everyone. Everyone could play it. They never lost that, you know, like, oh, now we're targeting older people so we can make it more complex. They never went with that mentality. They made it that it was always accessible, and they never really broke the brand of the character. Okay. Other studios haven't really quite learned that lesson yet. And I'm not going to name drop American studios because I have friends that work there, but, you know, I'm saying that very loosely that we know this as working inside of these studios. And it's not really our decisions, unfortunately, that really make that happen. It's usually kind of like, I hate to say it, kind of like the military style. It's above our pay grade, so we don't get to make that choice.
No, we definitely know how that feels. Well, I saw we have a couple questions in the chat, and I'd like to get to them at the end, Hallie and Spiders, if that's all right, because we're about at the time now, if that's all right with you guys, that we're we'll do what we did last week, a little speed run through of the news, and then we'll do a full circle and come back to any further questions that we have. But
we might have got a bit wrapped up in that, possibly.
Yeah, the incredible talk, later. Remy. Thank you so much for, you know, coming and giving us this whole spiel about your game and really opening a different view into, you know, the indie side of the house.
No, it's fine. It's games are only understood when people explain them properly.
I
So,
love that. I love that. Well, Gino, tell us. I think we should start with. You want to go with sports first this week? Do you want to tell us what happened with NXT, my friend?
oh boy.
Oh, COVID. You talking about COVID?
I'm talking about COVID-19, the unfortunate
Yeah,
bastard that
dude.
has come
You
for us.
you brought that up. Oh man. So apparently some wrestler gets tested and is positive for COVID, and
Mm.
they're supposedly testing all of the athletes weekly.
Which we now
And
know is a lie.
well, and here's my thing, dude. Who can you trust? You
Exactly.
can't trust the states reporting the COVID cases because they want more money from the government to deal with the corona. So things that have nothing to do with COVID
Hmm.
have to do with COVID.
Yeah.
You get people in the media that want to hype it so it's a pandemic so they get more views. I'm sure the stock market has gone up on fucking hand sanitizer or masks and everything.
Toilet paper.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This was like, oh, I'm just so tired of the whole damn thing, bro. You
Well,
can't trust anybody.
My
You
thing
can't
is,
trust anybody.
you endangered the community by, putting on this essential entertainment service by saying that you're doing all these safety precautions and then you go back and don't do them and unfortunately it's gotten one of your talents sick. It could be somebody, a lot of people forget that these aren't just guys that they play on TV and that's their whole life. They have other life outside of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
They live in the same buildings as some people.
that's what I hear. It's crazy. Like
That's what you hear.
it's nuts, dude.
They're like normal people, bro. They have like homes and cars and shit.
Yeah, it's almost like they're human beings or something.
Yeah, almost like they're
Yeah, I
human
think they might be.
beings. Well,
Look,
Remy,
man,
another similar
here's-
story, and I know
hold on
we
real
talked
quick,
about.
Bro. I'll tell you.
Sorry,
I'll
one
tell you
sec.
about the COVID thing. I don't think that. I don't think they give a shit anymore. All right. I don't think they do. We did it. We gave it the 60 days, the 45, 60 days of getting
And now people are
it
like,
interrupted and inconvenienced our American lifestyle, and now we're bored. And honestly, more important things are going on, in my opinion.
I agree.
In my opinion,
I
bro.
agree.
I'm like, why didn't we just isolate the old people and people with asthma or something? Why was it every person and destroy the economy? Anyways, next topic. Let's talk about Demon Souls, motherfucker.
Yeah, Gino,
Let's talk about Demon Souls.
So
Dude.
I'm gonna be the weird one in this and not say that before last Thursday, I didn't know what Demon Souls was, and I'm sorry. But could you all tell us a little bit about Demon Souls and the new remake that's coming out?
Remy, do you want to talk? Do you have a affinity for Demon Souls?
So, I'll be honest. I am the individual that has kind of unwrapped quickly what Demon, Dark Souls, and all the Soul series were very early. And once I understood the core gameplay loop, I kind of got bored with them over time. And people always
Are
think
you
I'm
talking about grinding?
No, actually, quite the opposite. It's
What?
So here's my old man talk of what Demon Souls and Dark Souls and all those games are to me. They're rhythm games. And when I say that to people, they always are like, what? It's a rhythm game? No, I just know music. What are you talking about? You're crazy. And I'm like, no, it's a rhythm game.
No rhythm.
And here's what I mean by rhythm game. If you ever see somebody who speedruns a game like, let's say, Mega Man, like any of them, Mega Man 1, 2, 3, X series, or whatever, level layout and enemy placement is absolute in that game. And knowing what item at the right time and to advance faster is what makes you progress, as a speedrunner. Dark Souls, Demon Souls, and all those games work in a similar system where all the enemies always spawn in the same locations. They always do the same type of attack animations, and they have one of three that they may choose from, depending on what stance you are, your distance, and the movement you're doing. So after I started learning how certain enemies reacted, and I played a stage 1 or 2 times, I learned the level layout, I quickly started realizing this is a rhythm game. And as soon as I started picking up on the rhythm of the game, it kind of lost the charm to me, where it's like, oh, this is supposed to be this infinitely hard game where it punishes you left and right. And I'm like, no, this is a game that makes you memorize things, and if you don't memorize it, it punishes you. That's what this game really is.
Yeah,
So-
fucking endlessly, Remy.
Yeah,
Look,
well,
dude. Hey, that's bullshit, and I'll give you a reason why.
Okay.
You got the advantage because you worked on that fucking rhythm game in college, and this is garbage.
Yeah, other games have
job.
for current games. You're absolutely right. That's exactly what happened to me.
Oh man.
I agree. I didn't even look, dude. Demon Souls is the reason I got a fucking PlayStation 3
Hey,
and abandoned the Ring of Death. You know what I'm saying? I love.
We have
this
another
game.
comment in chat, Gino, agreeing with you on that. It says Demon Souls is one of the best rage quit games with 5 exclamation points. It is a true fucking game. Well,
I'm not saying it's not a good game.
No,
I'm not saying
absolutely.
that. They're fun games.
I could see how you would understand that though. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like musicians that actually study music theory. They're way less impressed by songs than
by
normal
Justin
fucking-
Bieber.
Bro, I remember once my boy who was like first chair trumpeter and drill master or whatever the fuck they call him. Like, I remember Nickelback did the national anthem, and he was talking shit about why they did a 3/4 instead of a 4/4 and this, that, and the other. And I was just like, can you even enjoy fucking music anymore? I mean, I know it's Nickelback, but can you
even enjoy music?
It's tough.
No, I get it. I
say,
get it.
Demon Souls, Dark Souls, all the Soul series. One thing I do like is their atmosphere. They definitely have an immersive way to pull you into the world, and they don't do it by leaning you by the nose. They do it by all the little things, the character interactions, the stories of the items. Like, you have to piece together really what the story even is half of the time, and that's kind of interesting to me because, like, I've grown up in the age where there was no story. Then I grew up in the age where there was a lot of story. Then I grew up in the age where story was forcibly told to you only one way. And now I'm seeing it kind of go back full circle to having to piece things back together. I kind of like that the game took that step back and really immersed you that way because of it. So Demon Souls is a cool series. I'm actually kind of surprised that they're remaking it. But then another part of me is not surprised, to be perfectly honest, because the Soul series is popular and people love it. So it doesn't surprise me if they went back to square one and they wanted to get that one right.
They just worked there. They went up and then just started fucking working their way right back.
Yep.
All the way back to Demon Souls.
Well,
I will not lie though. They do the same thing that fucking Nintendo does, that Star Wars does, and they hit the nostalgia hard. When I saw that fucking Tower Knight with the big ass shield, I was like, oh shit! I know exactly what game this is.
Well, Gino, it's funny that you bring up Star Wars because here's some crazy news right now. We got Star Wars Squadrons coming out in October.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. I've been quoted on this show saying this about 47,000 times. Do not fuck up another Star Wars game. I swear to God, if you do that, I will lose faith. Because here's
Austin,
the thing.
To be fair, just to be fair though, Austin, the last Star Wars game that just came out, the one where you're playing as the Hidden Jedi, that was good.
Not a fuck up, right?
That was not a fuck up.
But here's the thing: two things before, we get 2 straight fuck ups right in a row. So when I'm looking at Star Wars and I'm looking at Squadrons, especially because when I was a kid, I really enjoyed Rogue Squadrons. I thought that was a lot of fun. I don't know. Did you ever play that one, guys? Where you're flying around the ships. I really enjoyed that. So for me, this also hits on the nostalgia, but also, bringing this into the future. I see Gino cracking up. What do you got, Gino?
Bro, I'm just like, how dare you ask me if I played a Star Wars game?
That's like asking me. It's almost as if I had a tattoo on my arm loving Star Wars.
Get out of here.
I remember when that was an outline. And I'm going to be honest, I'm actually really, really psyched about this game because apparently they are borrowing elements from the tabletop game X-Wing. And I play a lot of X-Wing. And
Remy,
apparently they're going to have the factions. And they're going to have them correct. So there'll be a bounty hunter faction, which means we'll have Mandalorian ships. Not just Boba Fett, Mandalorian ships.
Hell yeah.
I read that. I'm like,
okay.
Yeah,
I think a lot of the viewers of the stream will agree with you, Remy, because we've definitely been huge fans of Star Wars X-Wing over the last few years that we've started with ETG. Gino, tell us about this next topic that we got. I know we could talk about Star Wars all night, but we're almost out of time. But tell us a little bit about Xbox Smart Delivery. We talked a lot about PlayStation last week. Let's give Xbox a little bit of a thing. But you were surprised by this, I think.
Dude, I was. Well, and I was thinking about this, too, how PlayStation was going to do it. Because remember they said they were offering the PS5 fully digital, no discs. And then now Xbox is saying, if you've ever owned a game, like if you buy a game on Xbox One now, and they come out with the X Series, and they come out with a version for X Series, you get the X Series. Like you get it on your X Series. Even the discs However, they're kind of like putting that on the developers though. Like they're like, oh yeah, if it's a dope fucking game, it'll have on the disc. If the developer's into it, you shit ass. You know, too many games are already made to have put that in at this point. It's too late in the year. Rude. But I think it's pretty wild, dude. I like the idea of the backwards compatibility. It's not even about backwards compatibility anymore.
Yeah, because this is some
automatic update on your system.
This is something new. You know, this is something that we didn't get. How long is it? 7 years ago now was the release. This is something we didn't get back then, and this is something that new, younger fans. I can imagine there's probably a lot of people, that felt the same way I did back in high school. When I was hoping that my parents got me the Xbox for Christmas. I'm sure they're sitting in the same spot. But to know that a good majority of your library isn't going to go bye-bye, that's pretty awesome, I think.
Yeah. I was told by but before I left the game industry officially from AAA a couple years ago, one of my old colleagues and I were discussing this exact thing. This going back like 7 years ago. And the exact discussion was, how much longer is physical media going to exist in games, since games was going fully digital? We already had saw it happening as DLC packs and things of that nature years ago. And my friend predicted two generations. I predicted one generation. And sure enough, since then, we are now hitting the last generation of current consoles, being the PS5 and the Xbox Tower of whatever. And they're all going into digital. And it's like PCs already been doing this for like 10 years already, so it's not surprising.
They're computers. Yeah. Remy, they are fucking computers.
They are. They're computers that you plug into your TV.
It's just a dumbed down version of a computer. So that's why it doesn't surprise me that we're going down this route. That's what I'm getting at. Like, I was expecting that we're going to have, like, the Sony library, the Nintendo library, and the Xbox library being, like, the Steam libraries. Like, that was going to be the future that I saw for games. And we're slowly getting to that right now. So, like, Xbox kind of announcing that that's the path they're going is basically saying, this is our version of Steam, is what they're saying.
Except it really is. It really is, because I don't know, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, you buy multiple computers. It's nice knowing that you're not going to have to rebuy that game,
Yeah, I mean, there are some times where there are some games that we own that just don't get an upgrade after a couple of years. It happens every once in a while, but like my Steam library is over 300 games right now. So for that one that doesn't upgrade, I have 299 more I could go play. So, boo-hoo, I lost out on one game. But with Xbox, PlayStation, this has always been my issue.
What if it's a good one?
Well,
what if it's a good one, Remy?
What if it's a good one? I mean,
what if it's remake Obi-Wan for the Xbox original?
Okay,
remake it. I want to control a lightsaber with the joystick.
Hell yeah.
Okay, I'll give you that one.
Well, guys, we are coming down to our last 5 minutes of the stream. It has been crazy, but we have time for one more topic that we can talk about. I know we had a few more, but real quick, guys, Insomniac Games confirmed that Miles Morales is a standalone game, which means we're going to get Spider-Man 3. Gino, tell us about that. It's time for me now to look for someone to raid for tonight, and we'll start getting into our shout-outs and all that. But real quick, Spider-Man.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to talk about Spider-Man again. Let's talk about it again. We didn't talk about it 8 fucking times the last time we brought up Spider-Man.
Only 40 minutes.
And then you went maybe, 17 minutes without bringing it up again?
I almost fell out of my chair.
Okay. It's sick, dude, and I love it. Like, all right, spoiler alert, I'm giving you 5 seconds. Okay, I'm not going to wait 5 seconds.
Do your thing.
On the end of the first Spider-Man game, you remember, like, them both jumping up to the fucking ceiling. And you're like, fuck yeah. And that whole game, you knew you wanted to play as Miles Morales. And all we got was to, like, fucking sneak through an alley. And now we get the whole game. It's a standalone game? Is that, like, his origin story? I fucking love origin stories. It's the best part about comics. I really don't give a shit about Days of Future Past. Like, just give me the fucking... You know what I'm saying? I want Hugh Jackman in an octagon, all right, with his steel, and we don't know why they're steel, or adamantium, and we don't know why. God, I love original Origins, man. None of this new age shit. Yes, Mace, you more fucking Spider-Man, absolutely. All right. To wrap it up, thank you guys so much for seeing the stream. I'm sorry, I was like, Woo! Spider-Man. Okay. Fucking get it together, guy. Check it out. We're about done. We about to wrap it up. Big shout out to Remy, what we call him, the creative director.
Creative director of Floppy and the Sleepy Planet. Thank you so much, Remy, for coming out and doing the interview with us. We learned a lot tonight, and I think I can speak for everyone that's watched tonight that we're all really looking forward to this release.
Soon. Trademark.
Soon.
Absolutely.
So we are going to tonight, before we go to our shout-outs page and all that, we're going to raid our friend, That One Brit is the name of our audience tonight. But as always, my name is AJEastCoast, and it's been a wonderful evening with you all tonight. Gino, take us out, man, as I go do the raid.
Thank you, guys. You absolutely rock. Thank you for interacting, the comments. Thank you, Remy, coming in with the anecdotes and the insights. All right. Check out the website. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all fully updated. Website's getting a reboot. She's getting a facelift. All right. This is a serious production. Go check it out, guys. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, guys, and we are going to fade to our shout-out page. Tonight, we have our shout-outs from Enter the Gamer Actual, as always, putting on the show, Mafia Muscle Training. Thank you to Remy and Floppy and the Sleepy Planet. And our VIP fan, Boppy You're Nuts. He is my favorite. Floppy You're Nuts, maybe now. And our newest fan, Abigail 13. Thank you so much for coming by. Y'all stick around. We're about to go raid That One Brit. She's playing Valorant. It's going to be awesome.
Shout out to That One Brit.
You guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for coming by.
Take care, everyone.